Vladimir Putin fueling fears of an invasion as the standoff between Russia and Ukraine gets even more intense. Things changing rapidly, sometimes by the minute, and here is where we stand. Russian troops are within 3 miles of the border and are reportedly in attack position. There was hope earlier today for a Biden-Putin summit to calm everything down, but just hours ago, Putin declaring 2 breakaway regions of eastern Ukraine to be independent and saying that the country should have never been separated from Russia during the Soviet Union. President Biden responding and is set to slap sanctions on those regions. And the Kremlin just announcing Putin has ordered Russian forces to, quote, maintain peace in eastern Ukraine, but it is unclear if troops will enter. All that while the Biden administration continuing to warn that Russian troops could cross into Ukraine at any moment.
Every indication we see on the ground right now in terms of the disposition of Russian forces is that they are, in fact, getting prepared for a major attack on Ukraine.
We believe that it could happen any day, and that includes today. Today could be that day. Again, Bill, we're seeing things in the intelligence realm that's certainly giving us concern about how close he is now to moving. Every indication is that he's preparing for a large-scale invasion.
The Biden administration being criticized over the way they handled this entire situation. Vice President Kamala Harris out in Germany this weekend and is being accused of not being prepared.
I mean, listen, guys, we're talking about the potential for war in Europe. I mean, let's really take a moment to understand the significance of what we're talking about. Our position is for us very clear, which is as a leader, which we have been, bringing together the allies, working together. These are some of the greatest sanctions, if not the strongest, that we've ever issued. And it will exact absolute harm for the Russian economy and their government.
There's a lot to cover, so let's start with this. There's a call from Jen Psaki, White House press secretary, saying that we have anticipated a move like this from Russia and are ready to respond immediately. Geraldo, there you have Kamala Harris talking about the sanctions that are to come after the action was taken. And I think there will be a lot of debate as to whether at least some sanctions could have been put on ahead of time to prevent this, because now we've just been told in our ears that Russian peacekeepers are supposed to go and maintain peace in the new breakaway regions.
And so it begins. I think that whatever hesitation existed before, they must pull the trigger on these sanctions right now. By his assaultive language, by his moving his troops now within 3 miles of the frontier. And they are massed armor. We have to understand this is not like anything we have seen since World War II. He must have 500 of those heavy tanks, aside from the aircraft and the missiles and everything else. He is prepared for an invasion that won't stop until he gets to the Dnieper River, which divides Ukraine east to west. That's where the capital Kiev sits on one bank of the river. I think that that's what he wants. He wants half that country right now. And no telling, he could tell them to turn right and take those Baltic states, or at least threaten the NATO countries that were formerly part of the Soviet Union. I think that this is a crisis. Joe Biden has to stand up and speak without that damn N95 mask on that the vice president had. You couldn't hear her. You need captions to hear what the vice president is saying at this pivotal moment. I think it's politically correct at a worst possible time. But I think that this is now war. It is, maybe it's not war that involves NATO yet. But, for example, our paratroopers cannot stand up against that armor. Even the blessed 82nd, and you have Joey here, God knows he knows better than I, and the 101st, this is a mechanized major army, 190,000 strong, and now they are given the green light to cross over. It is like Sudetenland in 1938. I hate comparisons to Hitler and the Nazis, but this is when Hitler insisted on the German-speaking regions of Czechoslovakia. He got the German-speaking regions. Then he moved his army and took the rest of Czechoslovakia. This is history repeating itself. Biden is called upon now to be strong, stronger than he has ever been, more clear than he has ever been, and work in concert with our NATO allies who, thank God, have recognized that the tiger is loose in the building.
It's almost as if Putin only thinks that a unified Germany should stand after the fall of the Soviet Union. Here's General Jack Keane. Joey, let's listen to him and then get your take.
because he wants Ukraine to look to Russia and not to the West. But really, when it gets down to what he is talking about here, is that Ukraine never should have been separated from the Soviet Union. It is a part of Russia, and I'm taking back the land that is rightfully ours. That is what this is about.
And taking it back could be quite violent.
Yeah, it looks that way. I think the problem is we've sit around and tried to guess what is Putin, what does he want? And I think if Greg were sitting in this chair, he would say, why doesn't the president call him? Well, we hear today he's going to call him if he doesn't invade. And so what I don't understand about that is if he does invade, are you not going to call him? Like you're going to have to figure this guy out. You're going to have to understand, does he want the land? Does he want the reassurances from NATO? I hate to use a bad analogy, but I'm pretty good at using bad analogies. So if you've ever played Texas Hold'em and you have two people betting, one person's betting and raising the bet, and you got this other guy over here and he's just calling, and that's all he's doing. You know two things. One is that guy doesn't have a good hand, the guy that's just calling, and the guy that's betting either has a great hand or no hand at all. The guy betting is Putin. The guy calling is Joe Biden, and that's our problem. We look at this.
That's a good analogy.
Is it a good analogy?
Yeah, I think you did a good job.
I'm going to keep that one. Emily, don't let me forget it. So the point here is Joe Biden's reacting. It's all he's doing is reacting. He's not leading on this, and I'm not going to beat him up over it and say he should have prevented this 6 months ago. But at the same point, it's not like this caught us by surprise. Yeah. It's not like we don't understand what's happening. It's not like it's not been an issue for a long time. And why is it every day all we hear is this kind of semantics of, is this going to be a proxy war? Is this a land grab? Is this a push to get NATO out of the region? Is it all of that? Why can't our government answer that question?
Well, it turns
they're really asking it every single day because they don't know.
Jesse, it turns out that what Putin wants is what he's been saying he wants. And I don't know, doesn't seem like to be a lot of guessing, but the other thing that's happening is how it might hurt our economy as well, and that is having to deal with energy. If there's anything we've learned here, that an energy policy is very important. Let's listen to Kamala Harris on that part and get your take.
When America stands for her principles and all of the things that we hold dear, it requires sometimes for us to put ourselves out there in a way that maybe we will incur some cost. And in this situation, that may relate to energy costs.
I hope that we take some lessons about our own energy policy out of this.
So gas is going to $4 a gallon, and it's probably going to $100 a barrel within the next couple weeks if this thing goes through.
Stock market.
Stock market's going to take a huge hit, and with gas prices and oil going up, inflation's going to get much worse because it's tied to the dollar. Have we been prepared as a country to stomach this? No. This is the first time anybody in the administration says what's happening in Europe, this is how it's going to affect here, Americans in the homeland. And she's saying it with a mask on, and no one ever even cares what she says. The president needs to come out without a mask and explain why Ukraine impacts this country and why we need to care and what the hell is going on there. Yeah. And get us ready for this, because right now the American people are not ready for this. What's going to happen, oil's going to go up, inflation's going to get worse, and the Democrats and the media are going to blame Russia. You know what's going to happen? They just need another excuse, and that's fine, but that's not where we are right now. Where did we get here? All right? Bill Clinton forced the Ukrainians in the early 90s to give their nukes back to Russia. If he had just let the Ukrainians keep the nukes, Russia wouldn't have gone in. You don't invade a nuclear power. He forced the nukes out there back to Russia, and now they're sitting ducks for Putin. All right, so I expect a formal apology by Bubba soon. Also, the Europeans totally went green here. And they reduced nuclear, they reduced coal, they reduced exploring for natural gas domestically, and they're now just sucking at the teat of Vladimir Putin's pipeline.
Yep.
And they're over a barrel. They're going to get squeezed. There's nothing they can do about this because they're Putin's biggest customer. So that's also a problem. And then lastly, I'm trying to look at this objectively.
I can tell.
You know how I look at things objectively?
Yeah, constantly.
So since the fall of the Soviet Union, NATO has aggressively pushed NATO expansion into these former Soviet territories. Almost every decade, NATO adds another country. And even the last 4 years, we've added 2 more countries. Now, Russia is humiliated by that, and Russia sees that as a huge threat. Now, NATO doesn't see it as a threat. NATO sees Russia as a threat. NATO sees that as a defensive move. And so these two forces disagree with that, and they've been on a collision course ever since the Soviet Union crumbled. And here we are today. And now the American consumer is going to get destroyed by this. And we don't know why.
Yeah. And Emily, in the commercial, not commercial break, but we just started. We haven't had a break yet. But right before the show, I think that you were speaking so compassionately about the innocent people there who could be very much in danger right now.
Yeah, it breaks my heart. And, you know, the blame lies squarely on the shoulders of obviously Putin, but also Biden. We have a perceived commander-in-chief who has spent all of his time in office manufacturing a narrative about a perceived erosion of voting rights and of taking direction from teachers' unions and the CDC for masking kids. That's what our president has been focused on. So you talked about earlier, this is the time to call on him to be clear and confident. I have no hope in it. We said in the intro there were hopes with a Putin Biden summit. I had zero hope at all. In fact, I am frankly ashamed that he is the commander-in-chief right now, and I'm ashamed with our vice president going over there and taking that position because it is anything but
What position?
Strong. The position that they're saying of sanctions, of perceived strength when it's anything but. Jennifer Griffin, by the way, in her extraordinary reporting pointed out, you talked about the humiliation of Russia. Tomorrow, February 22nd, that's known as the Revolution of Dignity there in Ukraine, and that's a day of humiliation for Russia. It's a day of great significance there for Putin. And she reported the fact that in July, when Putin had a 21-page treatise, essentially, he was reading his playbook. He was talking about that in the past, going back to Russian leaders, to Stalin. He said, why did they give up so much? He called it madness to give those republics their land and the rights that they gave up. And he equated anti-Russian sentiment verbally with holding weapons of mass destruction against Russia. So I think to your point that this was absolutely predictable, but the time to stop it was a really long time ago. And that's why it was quiet during the past administration, because we had a different commander-in-chief.
I think you could actually go back several administrations and say that more could have been done all along the way. I mean,
Right, like
in
Bill
order
Clinton.
to counter
Right.
Putin. And
I just want to take up for Vice President Kamala Harris real quick. I think she probably keeps the mask on to hold down the cackle, and if that's the case, I'm okay with that. I think
all right, we'll leave it there.